I'm going to be sharing with you is some of the findings, some of the relevant findings of a large multi-country survey that LIRNEasia has done. In Asia, we covered 6 countries, but it's a global effort which has in total covered 23 countries. Sorry. Okay. Is it? Can you see the screen? We can. Yes. Sorry about that. Right. So as I said, this is a large multi-country study. We conducted most of the surveys. We collected the data between 2017 and 2018, late 2018 in Sri Lanka. And the surveys are nationally representative of the 15 to 65 age group in each of the countries. So it gives us a good basis for decision making and bringing evidence to the policy process. And for those of you who don't know, we're a regional think tank based in Sri Lanka, and we focus on digital policy and regulation issues. So I actually am going to keep this very brief because I'm sure there'll be a lot of stuff, there'll be more discussion, more time for discussion, which is always good. And just kind of jump in here. So as I said, the target group was the 15 to 65 population in Sri Lanka, and just to kind of first give you the bigger picture from the survey. So what we found was mobile penetration or mobile ownership in the country is quite, we're doing well in terms of the region. So 78% of the target group, Sri Lankans aged 15 to 65, own a mobile. And when you look at us compared to, say, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, we're pretty much ahead of everyone in the countries that we covered. So the countries we covered were Sri Lanka, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Cambodia. Sri Lanka was the richest of the 6 countries. Nepal is the poorest, which becomes relevant a few slides later down the line. But the thing is, almost half of these phones are still basic mobile phones. So even though a lot of people have mobiles, they still can only do basic calling and SMS, which is, through a basic phone. There's a small amount of people who have feature phones, which give you a little bit more of a, you can do some internet activities. You can, there are some apps that can be run, but compared to a smartphone where you have a full-on internet experience, touch phone, voice, apps, everything, feature phone is really not, it doesn't give you that much, you can't do a whole lot with it. So smartphone ownership was around 47% of this particular target group. So when we look at Sri Lankans on an individual basis. Then secondly, what we found was among this target group, 37% have used the internet at the time, up to the time when we surveyed them. And what we know from this is, it was mentioned earlier as well, most of this is through smartphones. There's very little computer penetration. And most of the activity that is most of what people are doing on the internet is fairly basic, I would say, still. So still it's, very much social media centric. And not that people are not doing other things other than social, sort of keeping in touch with people and, liking things and stuff like that. People are doing other things through social media, like looking at news, obviously reading news and finding more general information. But still, when you consider what the capabilities of a smartphone, we're still kind of at a very basic level, I would say. And also we have a lot of, across the region, Sri Lanka is possibly one of the countries where the gaps are not so bad, but we do have disparities between men and women and urban and rural still. So to give you an idea, in Sri Lanka, there's a gender gap of 34% in mobile ownership. So what this means, in internet use. So what this means is women are 34% less likely to use the internet than men. When we go on to look at TV and radio access and use, in contrast to internet use, it's pretty high. So 91% of households have access to TV, 84% have access to radio, and usership is fairly close behind. So then what we have done for this particular intervention with Sujata, what we've been looking at, what Tharaka has been very busy doing, is zooming in on the households with children. So anyone below the age of 18. Unfortunately, the way our survey was designed, we cannot really disaggregate beyond the below 15 years. So we're looking at houses where there are children even below 5 who may not be going to school, but then still, I mean, in the next 5 years, they'll be coming into the schooling system, right? So looking at the device and ownership and access and internet use in those households, what we find is less than half of all these households have, are able to avail of e-learning opportunities, because when you take so let's look at the devices first. So that if you look at this ring chart, the green rings in the center are device ownership or device availability in the household. So tabs 4%, desktop 7%, laptops 15%, but smartphones 48%. Then when you look at the level of internet access or availability in a household, so the red rings, you have 34% of these households have some form of internet access. But when it comes to, obviously, when it comes to being able to access e-learning opportunities, it's only that 33% that has both of these. It has the device and it has the internet connection to be able to make use of these opportunities. So when we compared Sri Lanka with the countries in the region that we studied, I mean, we're at the top end, but I would say Nepal, which, as I said earlier, is the poorest of these 6 countries, is actually doing better than us because they have higher internet penetration. So they have both criteria. They have, they have the smartphones, but they also have internet access. So then they can make use of these opportunities. Whereas we have a whole bunch of households with the smartphone, but they don't have internet access to make use of the opportunities. So then we also took a look, we cut the data by socioeconomic status of the houses. So socioeconomic SEC group A is the houses which are at the top end. So most educated, the sort of professional occupational groups, whereas SECD is at the other end of the scale where you have, obviously less of these things. So there's a huge divide between when you compare the SECAs versus the SECDs. And obviously that's a huge issue because, I mean, then if you look at the SECDs and Es, then access, the opportunity to access these possibilities is much lower, right? But even when you consider the SECs, so the highest socioeconomic group households in Sri Lanka, we still don't have 100% access. We have, I mean, at the most, 59% of these houses can make use of these opportunities, which is, it's still pretty worrying. If you take the same, so then we cut the data by urban and rural. Again, you see a disparity, but it's not as stark as you see in the upper set of graphs as socioeconomic, the breakdowns. So in terms of barriers to smartphone ownership, what we've seen, so this is going back to the larger sample across the board in Sri Lanka. the barriers to smartphone ownership. So this is among people who already own a mobile, but it's not yet a smartphone. There's a whole load of people that say they don't need one. Feature phone or basic phone is enough for them. But there's still almost a quarter that says, I can't afford it. It's too expensive for me. So that is a barrier that we need to think about in terms of device. Similarly, in terms of in terms of, say, the usage cost data, when we look at the Broadband Commission's targets for affordability, the target for 2025 is that 1 gigabyte of mobile broadband should cost no more than 2% of monthly income. This is a slightly old definition, and it probably would, it would need updating as time goes by, but still just indicatively, because this is the time the survey was done. So going by that criteria, on the whole, Sri Lanka still does, on the whole, we meet the criteria. So we can get it, say, on average, get a gigabyte of data with about 0.5% of monthly income. But when you do, again, you do the income breakdowns, and we look at, say, the poorest deciles going up to the richest, the poorest 6 deciles, so 60% of the population, for 60% of the population, a gigabyte of mobile broadband is by this definition, not affordable. So even if you look at the, in the worst case, the poorest decile, it's 7.5% of monthly income. So we still have a lot of, there's still a lot to be done in terms of just getting devices into people's hands and getting people on the internet and so on. I mean, the other barrier that I just wanted to touch upon before I finish is skills. Even if you have the device, are people able to actually use it in a productive way in order to access these, the e-learning kind of opportunities and things that are happening. So it's really obvious. I mean, obviously, it's only people who have smartphones in their hands or who already use the internet that can do any of these things. So we asked people if they're able to do any of these things, or have they done any of these things on the internet or online. So basic things like searching for information, 36% can. Going up to more advanced stuff like locating and adjusting your settings on an app, so privacy settings, passwords, all that kind of stuff. Still, there's a large number of people that don't know how to do these things. So and just anecdotally, there's about a quarter of, I think it was a quarter, or a fairly large number of people that we talked to in the context of this particular question actually hadn't even heard of any of these things. They just didn't know. So there's clearly a long way to go, and it's not just about being able to do these things as well. One, from the parent perspective, but two, from the child perspective. But it's also about being able to manage that once you're online, being able to manage that internet experience and the child themselves being able to ensure that they're able to experience the internet in a safe way and not be put at risk, because even say even if they're on a Zoom call class or something, they're still going to linger around on various websites stuff after the class is over. I know this from experience. So you need to make sure that the kids have this capability to manage that experience by themselves. And I think from what we have, we've looked at the school ICT textbooks, and really all we see is, if you going up below O-level grade, we see that really all that is taught in this area is that you should have a password and be a safe password. That is it. Nothing about how do you manage, the risks of, say, predatory behavior online and things like that. So there's a long way to go. And I think, I hope I have kind of flagged some of these issues and enlightened you all on these issues. Thank you.
Thanks, Ayesha. Based on your presentation only, there were 3 questions. Can those who wanted to ask those specific questions direct those at Ayesha, please, because it's directly related to the presentation. Can you all unmute your mic and ask the question, please?
Ayesha, this is Shamala. I just wanted to know how you, something about the sampling method, and I think is the size of the sample 1,600 odd? Is that what you said? I just wanted to know something about your sample,
Okay.
other than the age.
Right. So the overall survey sample was 2,000, just over 2,000 respondents, and in these particular, the number of households with children in them, so people below 18, is the number that you would have seen on the slide, which is 300. And the sample, of course, it's nationally representative. I mean, Tharaka can explain in more detail if you would like, but it's designed of less than 3% with 95% complex signal and so on and so forth.
Ayesha?
Yes?
Yeah, this is Lasantha. I don't know whether you said or not, just to actually clarify, what is the method of data collection? I don't know whether you said or not. I can't remember, that's why I'm asking.
Oh,
Method of data collection, yes.
So it was a household survey, face-to-face survey. So after sampling down to the household level, we then administered a small household questionnaire to the head of the household or someone who can speak to the household characteristics. And we get a roster of, we list down all respondents in the household who are eligible for the survey, and then we randomly sample from them to then ask a set of questions about their individual use, because internet and mobile use is fairly individual, right?
I think Sifan had a question.
Yeah, I had a couple. One was, so there was a slide about the cost per GB as percentage of monthly income. So on those deciles, were those the average monthly household incomes or individual incomes?
Yeah, so that was the mean monthly per capita income by this decile, based on the Department of Statistics HIES from 2016, sorry.
Then household income. Or individual income.
It's household income. We calculated the individual income based on the household income, because on the data we have was at individual level. So we convert the income decile data into household level data into individual level.
Right. So on your table, it's household.
The average. Sorry?
On the table that was shown, it's the household incomes.
No, it's individual income. All the data is there is individual level.
Right. Okay. And then there was, I think it was the last slide on only about 40% have done more than just browse the internet, and there was something. So I was wondering whether there was any impact on age in that. Like I would have thought younger people might have done more of those things. Older people maybe would have been less comfortable with that sort of thing.
Yes, yeah. I mean, across the board in terms of ownership, use, and the level, say level of advancement, we like to call it, in how they use internet. It's all very much, age plays a huge role. So exactly what you're saying, the younger group are very much more apt in this.